Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to day number 3 of the StarCityGames.com Players Championship here from the Star City Game Center in Roanoke, Virginia. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Matthias Hunt, Emma Handy. We are here to bring you our final day of coverage and finally crown ourselves a champion after, Patrick, what has been quite simply a marathon affair.
I mean, these players have been playing for so long. Many of them have been playing just a gauntlet of single elimination matches against the SCG's Tourist Best. Mm-hmm. There is a fatigue setting in among our players that are in the top 4, but also a lot of excitement. I mean, this is what they've been building for the entire year, an opportunity to be the champion, $20,000, the belt. We're going to be selling that all this afternoon.
They're lucky, Matthias, that we're letting them sleep in between days. They should be playing those Okomirs basically forever.
I mean, that's what Magic's about now. Yeah, we have 4 of the best players really in the field making it into the top 4. These are the matches we want to see.
And I guess apparently we've made a meme out
of it. So
yeah,
so you see,
you called it yesterday.
The commentators' picks will now be renamed the Matthias's Corner section of the broadcast.
Sure.
We were cubing last night. Insufferable.
Yeah,
I love you, but like. You know.
Yeah. Look, when you're right, you're right. You're allowed to be insufferable. I don't know. I mean, well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. Yes.
Knocked it out of the park.
No
getting
problem.
all 4 players correct. Emma, how are you this morning?
Oh, I can't complain too awful much, other than the cubing stuff I just referenced.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. We do have 4 of the very best on the SCG Tour in today, number 2 of competition. We do want to let you know what they're playing for. First and foremost here are 4 players that are left. You see, for the 4 of them, at the very least, they're walking out of here with $3,500. Second place will get you $10,000, and first place will get you the cool $20K, along with the SCG Tour Championship belt, which we will be getting out here a little bit later today for everyone to take a look at. There's a little graphic of it, but we got the real thing here. Whoever does win today gets to walk out of the Star City Game Center with that bad boy. So we should have a lot of fun working towards crowning a champion here, but we do want to go over what happened yesterday and their path to day number 3 of competition. We take a look at the upper bracket, which was standard yesterday. We did a little double elimination yesterday. And at the end of the day, Matthias, Oliver Tomiko, your pick to win the tournament, continues to make it look easy. He is through.
Right. So we have some stories here when we had our upper bracket. Oliver Tomiko has a winning record in every single format this weekend. He won his Legacy pod, then he won his Modern pod, then he XO'd Standard into the top 4. And it's almost like when then we have a format where we play all 3 decks, I somewhat think Oliver is in a good position for this tournament.
Emma, would you agree, given your choice to win the tournament early on?
Yeah, nothing's changed.
Yeah?
I would just say things have just been confirmed more than anything. I'm not really going to budge on this one.
That's fair. Well, you take a look at that bracket one more time. We do want to take a look at Edgar Magalhaes's path as well. For him, it was kind of an up and down tournament. Things started a little bit difficult, then he worked his way through some things. But more importantly, he really wanted to play Standard because he really felt at home at playing Jund Sacrifice Patrick. He was able to get by Collins Mullen, get by Drake Sasser, and then take care of Colin Roundtree, our Season 1 Invitational Champion, to punch his ticket to day number 3 of competition.
Yeah, the way that the tournament kind of shaped, a lot of the eggs were in the Standard basket. Edgar did not have a really good performance in Legacy, was up against the wall a little bit very early on in the event, but was confident in his Standard choice, played very well, was able to make the top 4. But now in these top 4 matches, if there is an issue with the Legacy deck, he can't hide it from it anymore.
Yeah, he's got to play.
Right.
He's got to play because we are doing in our top 4 best of 3 matches. That's, of course, all 3 formats, Standard, Modern, and Legacy. So these players are going to almost assuredly have to play all 3 formats throughout things, unless, of course, they do a 2-0 sweep and are able to fade one of those formats. We take a look at our lower bracket here very quickly, let you know how things did shake out for Dylan Donegan. Weirdly, our most seasoned player left in the tournament, the young man from Cary, North Carolina, was in the lower bracket with Devoted Devastation because we played Modern down there. He was able to get by Drake Sasser playing Humans, which was a very good matchup for him. Then he was able to take care of Matthew Dilks playing Amulet Titan, which, again, a very good matchup. You see the 2-0s, and then things got a little bit dicey against Colin Roundtree, again, the Season 1 Invitational Champion, but one of our first Invitational Champions there in Dylan Donegan, able to get it done. Emma, I know you know Dylan pretty well. You guys have played in tournaments together for quite a while. Not too surprising to see him make it through here?
No, not at all. We've kind of touched on him being the most seasoned player and that being a little bit shocking because he's on the younger side of things, but I honestly think that more just speaks to his natural aptitude for the game.
Sure.
All weekend, we've kind of seen him. He's been here before. right? And he just wants to finally get that win, right? He's already had the chance to play in this tournament. He just wants to close it this time.
Yeah, he was the most focused for sure with regards to how players were on the floor. He had his headphones in most of the day yesterday. Wasn't really interacting with anybody, not out of malice, but out of trying to get to this goal of getting to day number 3 of competition, Patrick. And he's here, and he even tweeted about it. He was pretty pumped up once he won that match against Roundtree.
Yeah, I heard him screaming out in the parking lot. He was pretty pumped up.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy that he had to get out of there.
Yeah.
If you look at that bracket, Donegan had the most stressful path.
Sure.
We have Zan and Oliver. They largely cruised. Edgar and Oliver largely cruised, and Zan at least had the beneficiary of getting to fade one single elimination match, as you can see by the way that bracket broke. Donegan was up against it very early on in this tournament, had to play a lot of high stakes, high stress matches the whole way through to get to where he wanted to go. He's here now, and he can let some of that energy go, but now you're in the top 4.
Yeah.
You're a couple matches away from maybe winning this thing, so I'm sure he's pumped.
Yeah, he certainly does want to win this one. You mentioned Zan, where he had a bit of an easier road as we take a look at that bottom bracket one more time, because he was in our winners bracket, lost down to the lowers, and just had to win one match over Zach Allen. But Matthias and Emma, you covered. Matthias, I'll come to you. What a match it was that he did win over what appeared to be a very bad matchup against Zach Allen playing Bant Snowblade.
For Zansaid, we talked yesterday about where he has this resilience and great attitude for this kind of tournament, and I really saw that come into play yesterday. Zan and Oliver are players who both crushed it on Friday, so they had a bye in the winners bracket. Zan got all the way to playing Oliver for a spot in Sunday, lost that match. It was his first loss in a long time, and it's got to be in a really hard situation. He lost a heartbreaking game 3 to Oliver, drops to the losers bracket, and suddenly finds Zach Allen, a player who has consecutively eliminated 2 of Zan's teammates on Zan's 75.
Yep.
So you're thinking, oh my goodness, am I about to crash out of this tournament? And it was a match where, okay, Zan, because of his day 1 performance, got to be in the play for game 1, got that. And then for the sideboarded games, he found, his teammates had worn down Zach a bit. Zach Allen was on, I think, his 9th game consecutively of the day, and Zan just really started playing the best Magic I've seen him play all weekend.
Yeah, and he was able to make it through what was a very difficult matchup. As you mentioned, he was knocking out members of Team Lotus Box left and right in that exact matchup. Zach playing Bant Snowblade, Team Lotus Box playing Devoted Devastation, but at the end of the day, Zan played a beautiful match, won it, and now he's into day number 3 of competition. So as we take a look at our top 4 bracket, it's Lotus Box versus the World. In this instance, the World is the person that most people pick to win the tournament in Oliver Tomajko. So at the very least, we know that Lotus Box is going to be in the finals, but can Tomajko actually take down the team and hoist the trophy on his own? That's what we're going to start to analyze right now. For Oliver Tomajko, he's going to go up against Dylan Donegan. You've got maybe your favorite for most people, and then your most seasoned player there in Dylan Donegan. And we'll start with the standard portion of things and what they are going to be playing in that side of things. So for Oliver Tomajko, he brought Simic Flash. He mixed it up a little bit, added some ops to the deck. And Emma, I'll let you take a look at this and kind of take it away a little bit with Tomajko's build of the deck.
Sure. So the big thing here is that he doesn't have anything like Brian Borden Cutthroat, but what he's done is kind of lean into these bigger haymakers and some catch-up cards in Brazen Borrower. A lot of what Tomajko's going to want to be doing is kind of just leveraging a mana advantage that he has and converting that into just damage over the course of the game.
Yeah, and try to get the game over pretty quickly. You see Tomajko's deck list there, Simic Flash, but we take a look at what Dylan Donegan is working with. He's playing Simic Ramp. Both of these decks were popular at Mythic Championship 7 last weekend. This one in the hands of Andrea Mengucci in his 4th place finish. And we know what Simic Flash was able to do in the hands of Seth Manfield, Javier Dominguez, and runner-up Brad Nelson. Matthias, how do we feel about this Simic Ramp deck and how it does match up against Simic Flash?
So Team Lotus Box had a team deck for 2 out of the 3 formats. And I think in Modern, they hit a home run with Devoted Devastation. It got both Zan and Dylan into top 4. I think for Standard, they swung and missed. Their Simic Ramp deck has had a pretty miserable record yesterday. I'm not sure it has any good matchups in this field. We kind of saw it lose to Simic Flash, lose to Jund Sacrifice. I think Dylan is behind, but at the same time, this is a Simic mirror. It's going to be a lot of tempo plays between the 2 players. And honestly, if I wanted to see pick any 2 players in the field to play a blue tempo mirror match against each other, it probably would be Oliver Tomajko and Dylan Donegan.
Well, Oliver got out the broom yesterday in the standard portion of things with Simic Flash, and he certainly looked at home playing that strategy. It's very powerful if you know how to do it, Patrick. And against the Simic Ramp deck, which I don't want to say it lacks decisions, but it doesn't have nearly as many as the Simic Flash deck does, it seems like it might be advantage Oliver, at least in this portion of things.
Oh, I think that's definitely true. I think there's a lot of burden on Dylan to get out of the gates with a ton of mana.
Sure.
The Simic Flash deck, a a lot of its ways to defend itself are either expensive or they're soft counter spells. And so if you just develop your mana, you can put them the flash deck into this holding pattern of having to just wait there, leave up 4 mana to counter spell while you develop your mana and do other things. But if you just make your land drops and say go, then you're running up into the soft counters being good and the hard counters being devastating. So Dylan's really got to develop the mana early on in the game. That's the key here. If he doesn't just blow the doors off early on, it's very hard for him to slog through those counter spells because he's only got so many meaningful cards.
Yeah, that's the thing. He does only have so many meaningful cards, and some of them you'll still be able to draw cards and gain life, of course referencing Hydrate Races, but if you still counter that, that doesn't mean that it's on the battlefield killing you. So we'll see how Oliver does approach the matchup. Same thing with Dylan. I imagine those players tested the matchup a decent amount last night. That's standard. For Modern, there are options there. Again, we'll start with Oliver Tamaiko and his Modern deck. He is playing Bant Urza, which, again, we kind of expected to see some Urza decks in the room here, Matthias, but you would expected to see them in the hands of Team Lotus Box, and you don't.
Right. So Lotus Box is in Modern on the Devoted Devastation decks, and they're going to be up against Urza decks for the course of this tournament. And that's going to be a pretty interesting one. Urza was the deck to beat. Something pretty interesting. Oliver generally just stuck to the good decks. And I think the question here is going to be, do they beat the deck that they were trying to beat?
Yeah.
And it's going to be close.
Yeah, I think this matchup is one, Emma, that they were pretty prepared for. You're going to see Dylan's deck here in Devoted Devastation in just a second. How do you think this matchup goes between Dylan and between Oliver? Because Devoted Devastation, they kind of brought it to kind of juke the Urza players and presumably beat them.
Sure. So I think a lot of this is going to come down to play draw because the Urza deck is powerful, but it needs time to set up. Things like Spell Queller out of Tamaiko's deck are very powerful against the Removal Light Devoted Devastation deck, these sort of linear combo-y archetypes. But this deck just kills you on turn 3. It basically plays a Devoted Druid on 2, maybe a Giver of Runes to protect it on 1, and says check.
Yep. Do you have an answer? Yes, no?
Yes, I am a big fan of Devoted Druid here.
Okay, fair enough. We go to Legacy now very quickly. Patrick, I'll start with you. It's 4-color Mentors. You see Tamaiko is just, he is just blue through and through and through.
Yeah, I mean, this is about as metagame for blue mirrors as you can really get.
Yeah, it's really true.
And, you know, in spite of being 4 colors, mana base is largely built wasteland proof. There's a couple dual lands hanging out there that you can fetch for in the matchups where they don't have it. But you're looking at Astrolabe, kind of gluing that together. Bunch of powerful, good cards. Expecting a field with a lot of blue decks, and got paid off for that, I think, in the pool rounds on Friday. But here in this top 4, it's going to be quite a bit different.
It's funny, too, because Dylan is no slouch with playing these blue decks. He's been playing for a very long time. For as long as we're watching him play Magic, you'll see his Legacy deck up here in just a moment. It's not blue, though. It's Hogak. And this is kind of an interesting juke here because you would have expected to see him playing some Brainstorms or Delvers or something, Emma. But instead, he is doing this. And I think this is probably where he is most advantaged in the entire matchup across all 3 matches is that deck that he is playing because really, it doesn't seem like anyone has a great check against that deck here in all 16 players, even though there are only 4 left.
Right, so this is a spot where Lotus Box kind of realized that there were going to be a lot of these blue mirrors in Legacy, and whenever you know what a metagame like that is going to be, you have a couple of options. You can either fight on that access like we saw from Tamaiko, or you can opt out and try to go around it in some other way. So we're seeing Donegan and, you know, by extension Team Lotus Box kind of just choose to hope this graveyard deck is going to actually always win. Right, these are your high variance sort of win the tournament or come in last place plays, and there isn't very much graveyard hate this weekend, so I think he's getting paid in a big way here.
And Patrick, you felt pretty strong about this decision here from Donegan and Team Lotus Box of basically trying to maybe not slog in the blue mirrors so much, but we saw in pod play earlier where it was Hogak, it was Matthew Dilks with Golgari kind of ramping in the dark depths, and other decks that were not blue that actually kind of ruled the day and were the best decks going in through day number 1.
Colin Roundtree with Death and Taxes as well. It was not a good performance overall for these very metagamed blue decks.
Except for Oliver, obviously.
Yeah, that's sort of a different case. We can set that one aside for a moment. Dylan was talking like this was not even close. This was the best choice for Legacy.
Okay.
They thought that very confident that they broke it open here, that there just wouldn't be the requisite graveyard hate. To the extent there would be graveyard hate, it would probably be Surgical Extraction, which ranges anywhere from modest to completely ineffectual, depending on how the game is shaped up. These competitors are broadly not ready for this sort of a deck. And I think if Tomiko is somehow able to steal this match, he's in a great position to take it, because I think the other matchups are much more, at least in the 50-50 range. But this one's going to be very tough for Tomiko.
Well, we're going to do our pick'ems here very quickly if we can for this particular matchup. I know who I picked because I picked him to win the tournament, though I think he's got a tough road here. Dylan Donegan, I think he's favored in Legacy, and he definitely has to win that match, and presumably his deck, the Devoted Devastation, should take care of Oliver's deck that he's brought to the table there in Vanth Urza. So if that's the case, give me Dylan Donegan for you.
I still have trust in Tomiko here. I think his play's been very, very sharp. We've talked a lot about how bad the Legacy matchup is for Tomiko. I think the Standard matchup is going to be also problematic for Donegan. It's going to come down to Modern, and Tomiko has the reps and understanding of that matchup, I think, to get through to the finals.
Matthias's picks, since you're
Well, so we're with me, Matthias's corner part here, where I, Matthias Hunt, tell you of the things to come in this tournament. And in this matchup, though I do think Dylan Donegan has a great... Thank you.
All night.
Dylan Donegan has a great Legacy matchup. I do not believe it will come into play, as Oliver Tomiko will score a 2-0, thus ending the match before Legacy can begin.
Wow, fair enough. Emma, how do you feel now that Matthias's quarter is over?
All right. All right, so for the most of it, I really like Patrick's take on how this is going to go. We see a couple of lopsided matchups and one that may end up favoring Donegan a bit, but I think it is much closer than it actually feels. Things like Spell Queller are going to give Tomiko a lot of help here if he can just bridge to those phases of the game. And with things like Gilded Goose, it's just doable.
Okay. Well, we see 4 picks for Oliver. I'm on a lone island here. Dylan, don't let me down. I picked you early on to win the tournament. You're still alive, though Oliver continues to be the odds-on favorite of many here as we prepare to take a look at our top 4 bracket once again to see the other side of the bracket. And I know this one's probably going to take a little bit longer here between Edgar Magalhaes and Zan Saeed. They have, they've got some decks that have quite a bit of play to them across all 3 formats. Zan loves to play a control strategy where he gets to keep kind of his own destiny in his hands. He didn't even decide to play Hogak and Legacy. We'll get to that in just a moment. We will start with the standard decks. For Edgar, it's Jund Sacrifice. I'm going to start with you because you know this deck incredibly, incredibly well, and apparently we're going to go to the standard decks once Rob gets there. But we know that Edgar knows this deck well, and so do you. This is a great choice, and this might be the best deck in the format.
Right. This deck is just kind of incredible against most of the Breeding Pool decks. A lot of that just has to do with the inevitability it can present and the fact that Mayhem Devil gives it a ton of sort of hasted reach in a lot of ways. And throughout the weekend, we have seen Edgar just hot knife through butter.
Yep.
Looking at the competition, we saw him with his back against the wall a couple of days ago, grudge match in Standard against our reigning champion Joe Lissette, win a game of Standard, or a match of Standard rather. Yesterday, he just back to back from the bottom of the top bracket straight into the top 4, not dropping a match with this deck.
He feels confident with it. I know that. He even said that on social media. He wasn't feeling great about Legacy, felt okay about Modern, but for Standard, he felt great with Jund Sacrifice. And Matthias, going to come back to you because Zan is playing the same deck that Dylan is. He's playing Simic Ramp. They have not done that great in the Standard portion of things. Do you feel that holds true for this matchup too?
I think it holds true for this matchup. I mean, there was a big concern. We saw some of these matchups play out in the Swiss of the tournament. And we had a match where Edgar Magalhaes was playing against Bant Ramp, and thought is I wanted the Ramp deck to win on turn 10, as Ramp decks do, and they went to turn 10, and Edgar won. Because actually, when you get to turn 10, his deck is more powerful. He's better in the early game, he's better in the late game. I just think he's better in this matchup.
Corvolt's a better Hydroid Crisis.
Right. It is. Yes, he's better at drawing cards in the late game than the Ramp.
That is, oddly enough, I think actually quite true. Corvold is probably the best thing going on across both decks, and the Simic Ramp deck doesn't have a way to take care of Corvold outside of Ether Guts, which can do it temporarily as we turn our attention towards Modern now. For Edgar and his Modern deck, we'll take a look at it right now. It is Sultai Urza, so you do see some Urza being played here. He's not on Devoted Devastation like Zan and the rest of the Team Lotus Box are. Patrick, this you see, and I know you and I covered Urza Colin Roundtree playing Sultai Urza. This one's a little bit different against Devoted Devastation, and Devoted Devastation was able to get the job done. Do you think that happens again?
I think the matchup's still pretty close. The Sultai deck is flush with interaction. It's not like the Bant builds that are really leaning on Oko. You have Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, and access to more of that kind of stuff in the sideboard, Assassin's Trophy as well. I still think on the balance, the matchup is favorable for Devoted Devastation. What's going to be interesting, and I talked about this when we watched this matchup before, is going to be the mulligan decisions.
Sure.
The explosive Urza draws, the put a bunch of stuff on the battlefield, grind extra cards with Emery. I don't think those draws are very good here. I think you want a slower draw with a lot of interaction. Normally, it's the opposite that you're looking for with this deck. And so, are you mulliganing aggressively for the hands that are much more interactive at the expense of the hands that are maybe faster to the battlefield?
Well, we'll have to find out as we turn our attention to Legacy very quickly. It's our last format between the two players. For Edgar Magalhaes, I think we're going to work ourselves into quite the blue mirror. This one could take a little while here. He's got Bant Snow in Legacy. You see the Jaces, the Okos, the Teferis, plenty of Planeswalkers, Force of Wills and Negation, Swords, Veils, Ponders, Brainstorms, yada, yada, yada. It's a blue deck in Legacy, that's for sure. For Zan, he also has a blue deck in Legacy. His is of the Sultai variety. Forces, Brainstorms, a little bit more removal, Okos as well. This one's going to probably take a while. Does anything stand out to anybody about who's favored in that matchup? As we go down the line, anything stand out there?
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of Zan here. So before I kind of touched on the idea of fighting the blue mirror or opting out of it. There are two different metagame calls that Lotus Box made for this. They had Hogak, which is opting out, but they didn't want to be completely cold in case everyone decided to opt into Leyline of the Void, Helm of Obedience combo.
Sure.
And had this other Sultai deck that instead of using a synergy to go around it, is playing with a ton of hammers that are going to be great in these blue mirrors. We see a bunch of main deck Veil of Summer, Shaving, Force of Will, a bunch of main deck Bitter Blossom, Leovold, all these cards that are just going to come out ahead in a blue mirror.
Yeah. His build is definitely, I think, tailored towards beating a blue mirror, and that's what's going to kind of make this matchup interesting. As we take a look at our pick'ems here very quickly, we've got a very long. That one's going to be a long matchup between the three players, but I'm going to side towards Edgar here, and it looks like we all are siding towards Edgar here. No suspense there. Zan, our SCG Tour Player of the Year, has had a heck of a run, but what really kind of sets it apart for me is I think that Edgar has a huge advantage in Standard. And then the other matches can go how they're going to go, but I think it's 1-0 Edgar to start with Jund Sacrifice over Sultai Ramp, and then he's got to win one of the next two matches, which I think are very doable. I think the games will be close, but if I just think it's very, very close across the board, but I think one is a landslide there for Edgar and Jund Sacrifice. So, yeah,
I mean, my position's pretty much the same. I think you've got two matchups that could go either way. I wouldn't be shocked if Zan won by any stretch, but the edge and Standard there, I think the smart money would be on Edgar.
Fair enough.
3-0 Edgar.
3-0. Ooh, boy. Matthias' corner indeed.
There we go.
Okay. Final picks here about who we think is going to win the tournament. Well, I'm not going to change my mind. Dylan Donegan. It's going to be a tough road, but it's going to be a tough road for all four competitors. Whoever hoists this trophy has certainly earned it over the 3 days of competition, so that is my pick. Patrick, you can't pick Chris Barone.
Colin Roundtree also off.
You can't pick Colin
Sorry
Roundtree.
for the death sentence here, Edgar, but I'm going with you.
Okay, fair enough. There it is. We've got Oliver Tamaiko for Matthias, Oliver Tamaiko for Emma, and then Nick picked Edgar right from the start. So, Zan, it's nothing personal. We're big fans of yours, and you're the SCG Tour Player of the Year and captain of Team Lotus Box, but no one has picked you here. That is going to do it for our final pregame show of the year 2019 and for the Star City Games Players Championship. We take a short break. We come back. Patrick and I are going to kick things off. We're going to get our first match underway. Dylan Donegan going to do battle against... My brain's not working.
Oliver Tamaiko.
Thank you. It's early, and I don't drink coffee.
I got you.
Thank you. We'll see you guys back here in just a bit.